Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going on a seriously fascinating journey that bridges two worlds we usually think of as totally separate. On one side, we have these deeply subjective, mystical experiences, and on the other, hard clinical science. We're going to dig into what it actually means to be aligned, both mentally and physically. Let's get right into it. So, tell me, have you ever felt this sudden, quiet certainty that you were exactly where you needed to be? Maybe it was just a moment of profound peace, or a flash of absolute clarity during a really tough decision, or even just a feeling that life was, flowing effortlessly. Humans have been reporting this exact experience for millennia, but what's actually happening to us when we feel this way?
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover what spiritual alignment is, the psychology of flow, the connection between your body and spirituality, healthy versus pathological experiences, decoding synchronicity, and finally, how to actually cultivate that inner connection.
Let's kick things off with Section 1. What is spiritual alignment and discovering that quiet certainty?
Right off the bat, we need to completely normalize this feeling of being guided. It's not just some out-there concept for esoteric gurus meditating on a remote mountaintop. No, it's a highly accessible, everyday phenomenon. At its core, spiritual alignment is simply a state of harmony between your inner self and the broader universe. And a huge piece of this puzzle is your higher self. Think of this as the wisest part of you, the part operating from clarity and purpose, not fear. Because while our ego usually shouts with this anxious, stressful urgency, the higher self, it speaks with a quiet, undeniable certainty.
Moving on to Section 2, the psychology of flow, or the science of ordered consciousness.
This is where it gets really cool, because we can see how these seemingly mystical feelings actually show up in observable mental states. On one side, you have the ancient biblical concept of shalom, which means peace, wholeness, and letting go of excessive self-concern. On the exact flip side, you have psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's modern concept of flow. Flow is this optimal state of intense concentration where self-consciousness literally disappears and time totally distorts. And you know what? They map onto each other almost perfectly. When you're in a flow state, you're experiencing an ordered consciousness that feels incredibly spiritual.
Next up, Section 3, your body and spirituality, exploring the somatic connection.
Turns out, your physiological state is deeply, inextricably linked with your mental and spiritual alignment. You can't separate the mind from the vessel it sits in, right? This boils down to something called interoceptive awareness. That's your ability to consciously perceive your inner bodily sensations and use your body for self-regulation. Actually, a December 2025 study from Witten-Herdecke University in Germany proved that spirituality isn't just happening in your head. It literally arises from a high ability to sense your body's internal signals. Simply put, the more you can feel your physical body, the more intense your spiritual experience tends to be.
Just to give you an idea of the massive scale we're talking about here, researchers examined data from over 730 Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists. And get this, here is a wild twist. You might automatically assume Buddhists would have the highest body-spirit connection, right? Given their heavy focus on meditation? Actually, scratch that. It was the Christian participants who showed the strongest statistical correlation between body awareness and spirituality. It just proves how universal and deeply physical these experiences really are for all of us.
All right, Section 4, healthy versus pathological experiences, navigating the clinical boundary.
So we definitely need to address the elephant in the room. How on earth does clinical psychiatry separate a healthy spiritual awakening from a genuine mental disorder? Well, a fascinating silo literature review from researchers at the Federal University of Juiz de Fora in Brazil tackled this exact question. They systematically crunched through over 135 scientific articles, looking for a solid consensus so doctors don't mistakenly label a perfectly healthy spiritual experience as a psychiatric issue. Historically, psychiatry has really struggled to draw this line. Sigmund Freud, famously, or notoriously, considered religion to be an obsessive neurosis. But on the total opposite end of the spectrum, psychologists like Abraham Maslow viewed these mystical peak experiences as the absolute pinnacle of human well-being and health. So how do modern doctors actually tell the difference today? When you look at the clinical features, a really crucial distinction emerges. Healthy spiritual experiences, they're usually short-lived, they promote personal growth, and they fit within a person's cultural background. But the real game changer is insight. Clinicians look for what they call a critical attitude. This means a healthy person actually doubts the objective reality of their mystical experience. They'll pause and wonder, wait, did I just imagine that? Pathological disorders, on the other hand, are marked by absolute, unwavering certainty, combined with severe psychological suffering. So, paradoxically, true spiritual health actually leaves healthy room for doubt.
Let's dive into Section 5, Decoding Synchronicity and the Meaning of Coincidences.
Okay, now we're getting into the highly mysterious territory of meaningful coincidences. You know those bizarre signs and patterns you start noticing when you feel really aligned? It's absolutely vital here to separate random serendipity from Carl Jung's concept of synchronicity. Finding a crisp $20 bill in an old jacket, that's serendipity. It's just an accident, a lucky break. Synchronicity is a meaningful string of highly symbolic events that feel like active guidance. It feels way less like an accident and much more like a deliberate trail of symbolic breadcrumbs leading you exactly where you need to go.
And there are incredibly varied perspectives on why this actually happens. I love how impartially this breaks it down. Behavioral economists will tell you it's just confirmation bias. You're just seeing what you already want to see. Skeptics call it apophenia, our human tendency to find patterns in totally random data. But then you have Hindus pointing to a manifestation of Brahman's universal connection, and spiritual seekers viewing it as direct guidance from that higher self we talked about. Add quantum physicists suggesting a non-local universal mind, and Jungian psychologists seeing messages bubbling up from the collective unconscious. It's a lot. Whether you believe it's a cognitive bias or true quantum guidance, synchronicity is just a universally fascinating human experience.
Finally, Section 6, Cultivating Interconnection, where we bridge the science with everyday practice. Let's take all this science and apply it. How do we actively foster this state of alignment and quiet certainty in our own messy, busy lives? Well, by taking concrete steps. Focusing your attention through mindfulness and meditation to cut through the mental clutter. Grounding yourself in nature, far away from all that digital noise. Shifting your perspective to gratitude. And deeply tuning into your physical body's somatic signals. By doing these things, you can actively quiet the ego's anxiety. These aren't just fluffy, feel-good exercises. As the science shows, they literally invite the flow state, that spiritual shalom, directly into your daily work and relationships.
This quote by Eckhart Tolle beautifully wraps up our whole journey today. It's a great reminder that whether you're looking at this through the strict, objective lens of clinical neurobiology or the expansive, subjective lens of ancient mysticism, the result is exactly the same. Finding that present moment alignment empowers absolutely everything we do.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative question to chew on. If your higher self, that quiet certainty, that flow state, that deep somatic awareness, is already there, just waiting in the quiet moments, what might change in your life if you finally stopped performing for the world and just started paying attention to it? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I challenge you to look inward a bit this week. Catch you next time.